Okay. Thank you all for joining us tonight. We look forward to our conversation we're going to have. I will open it up by passing it to Commissioner Navarra to get us started. Do you want me to share my screen now or do you? Okay.
Go ahead. Yeah, that'd be great. Thanks, Aaron. Good evening, everyone. Great to be with you. Thank you so much to Alderwoman Jeanette Taylor and Alderwoman Leslie Hairston. Thank you for kicking off this meeting with us. Housekeeping, I will just ask that if you're not speaking, if you can put yourself on mute, that would be great. And there we go. Thank you. And we will dive in. We have been, this was our scheduled February return of the working group. So we've been looking forward to this. And I'm joined by several colleagues. You all know and love Erin Johnson from the Department of Housing. We also have Whitney Mungan from the Department of Housing, who oversees our homeownership work, and Justin Peterson from the Department of Planning. So eager to have you hear from all of them as well. I want to just note the agenda, and then I want, before I turn it back over to Erin, I want to give a chance to both Alderwomen if they'd like to say anything as we jump in. So welcoming, that's what I'm doing right now. Our recap, Erin's going to walk through, what did we hear at our last meeting in December, and how does that shape what we're talking about tonight? He'll give an update on all of the programs that are in the ordinance and where we are with those. We've got some great progress there to discuss. And then we are excited that we have two initiatives that we wanted to discuss with this working group out of the definite things that we heard from various members of this group. One, we heard a strong desire for a proactive push to get rental housing on city-owned land and to get rental housing that addresses the deeply affordable commitments that are made in the ordinance. So we heard that loud and clear. And of course, we've also heard all along from the working group an interest also in establishing more opportunities for homeownership within the community. And so what we're excited about is that we have the opportunity to do both of those things. And we have a proposal for each to walk through with you tonight that would address both of those pushes that we've heard and that we've been part of from the beginning. So we will walk through both of those proposals with you and then open it up for discussion and next steps. So before we go any further, I do just want to turn over to the Alderwomen who have joined us tonight to say anything they would like to the group.
Well, I guess I'll go ahead and start. Good evening, everybody, and Happy New Year. I'm glad that you all have joined us this evening, and I want to thank you, and I want to thank the commissioner and her staff, but mostly I want to tell you how grateful I am that you all have been steadfast in this process, and it's great to have a group that has been meeting for a long time and actually making progress. And I know that's a big time commitment away from you and your families. So I'm really grateful. Let's get started. Is Jeanette here? Alderwoman Taylor?
I am Alderwoman Hairston. Thank you. So good evening to everybody. I will echo Alderwoman Harrison in saying thanking you for taking the time out to put the work in. And we got a long ways to go. What I'll say is that I want you all to listen to hear each other and not listen to respond. This has been a long time coming. People have worked very hard to get us here, and nobody said that it would be easy. But I want you all to trust the process and know that we all look at this at a different way. We all want the same things, and that is affordable housing around the ward and for our neighbors to be able to stay in the communities that they love. And that is the ultimate goal. And so thank you all for this work. Continue to work, continue to push, continue to work with us to get what's right for the folks in our community. Thanks, Commissioner.
Thank you to both alderwomen. I can't think of another effort that has been this sustained where we've had the elected officials there at every step of the way, helping move this forward. So thank you so much for that. I will turn it over to Erin now to take it from here.
Thank you, Commissioner. Also, I will make a quick note. If you can put your name, connection to Woodlawn, and your favorite Woodlawn place to eat in the chat, that would be helpful. That helps us keep track of who's in this meeting, but also getting some good places for us to just know about what's in the community and assets in the community. So please put your name, connection to Woodlawn, and your favorite place to eat in the neighborhood. So as a quick recap over our last meeting, as the commissioner mentioned, we first took away that there is an interest in a broader community conversation about the pre-identification and proactiveness of what we're doing for deeper reportability. The second piece is that there's interest in working with development teams to create proposals that will meet the goals of the working group and making sure that it's reaching the affordability outlined in Section 3C of the Woodlawn Housing Preservation Ordinance. So since our last meeting, DOH and DPD has worked on these two takeaways and more, and this meeting is just providing an update on that progress. Overall, I'm going to provide a quick update on our other housing efforts that are going on that's part of the ordinance. We're working with the CCLT, the Chicago Community Land Trust, on their opt-in program. So this should hopefully be ready in the second quarter of this year. That's for homeowners to opt in. That provides a potential to apply for a grant up to $30,000 for agreeing to remain affordable in the long term. And the CCLT, the Chicago Community Land Trust, has already acquired a 2-flat home in Woodlawn that is construction is going well and progressing forward smoothly, which they hope to make affordable to homeownership available to affordable levels as well. That's permanently affordable. Our long-term homeowners improvement grant, that application today is the last day. It just closed an hour ago. I know that we've already gotten several applications, a good number of applications through this period through an extensive outreach process that members of the working group helped with, including door knocking, mailings, and proactive communication from the alderwomen's offices as well. So I know we've gotten a lot of response from there in that application closed today, and hope to be able to report once we get all of the application information. I can provide more information around that. The tender right of first refusal, those documents and forms are posted on the Woodlawn website. There know your rights information and the owner's posting information. So please check that out for more information. For Renew Woodlawn, which is our another home ownership purchase price assistance program. The program agreements are being finalized, so hopefully we'll launch that soon. Which is the RFA for building neighborhoods and affordable homes, which we'll talk about today, which is a purchase price assistance up to $60,000 for the homes constructed, affordable home ownership opportunities constructed. For our local developer preference and local hiring plan. Again, those are already built into our work, and that's very aware of what city staff is looking at. City Lots Working Family is our affordable home ownership program that we're working on in Woodlawn. And you'll hear more about that today. Our loan fund, the Woodlawn Loan Fund, launched last year in April. We've already had rental housing take use of this, and other ones are in the pipeline that are interested in this program. We'll talk about the deeply affordable RFP today. And then our program for PAIR has launched. We've shared this information, but we haven't, there's been interest in it, but no applications yet for our Preserving Existing Affordable Rentals refinance tool. So yeah, thank you all. Just keeping it top of mind that, you know, there's a lot to this ordinance. There's a lot of programs to this ordinance that benefits current homeowners, renters, people interested in purchasing, and then making sure that these opportunities are available to a wide range of incomes, and making sure that these opportunities are benefiting the people who live there in the community and new residents as well. So I will pass this off to Justin, who's with us, Justin Peterson, who is a planner with the Department of Planning, who can talk us through the proposal. But first, I'll just provide an update on just a reminder of what we're talking about here. So when we're talking about these deeply affordable lots, that's section 3C of the Woodlawn Housing Preservation Ordinance, which says that a provision that says that we'll retain a certain number of lots for deeper affordability. That's 52 lots, which is 25% of the city-owned land in Woodlawn for development of rental of very low income individuals, which is 50% or below AMI. So this is what the ordinance says we'll need to do, is that we'll need to develop, deeply affordable housing on 52, on lots. 15% of those units created on those lots should be have rents priced for people at 30% to 50% area median income. And another 15% of units created on those lots should be households with incomes below 30% area median income. And at least 10 of those must be on the highest allowable density. So that's what the ordinance states. Just a reminder, though, that all land in Woodlawn has affordability restrictions on it for rental and home ownership. And that if it's a project when 15 or more units, regardless if it's these deeply affordable, there's still units that are reserved for people at 50% area median income and 30% area median income. So that's just a reminder of what the ordinance outlines for development on city-owned land and for rental housing. And I'll pass it out. Now I'll pass it off to Justin to go over the RFP.
Thanks, Sharon. Good evening, everyone. So, we're starting obviously with the whole neighborhood here, and in conversations with the working group and with our colleagues in DOH, we've been trying to zero in on where to really get started. And, obviously we have the focus area here, as everybody knows, Straddling Cottage Grove and 63rd Street. So then looking at this, we can see in the red, these are the city-owned lots, and the blue is the Cook County land bank. And already we see there's a kind of critical cluster sort of along 63rd and close to Cottage Grove. So Aaron, if you go next. So zooming in there to that area between Cottage Grove and Woodlawn Avenue and 63rd and 65th Street, we started to really kind of dig down and analyze this area. And this slide indicates recent developments and developments that are in the pipeline. So that would include Woodlawn Station and Park Station. And that gives a good sense of scale for 63rd Street. The parcels in the kind of pink hatch are city-owned land. As you can see, a lot of the city-owned land are these sort of smaller, typical Chicago lots on the side streets. So with standard dimensions around 25 feet by 120 feet, or 50 feet if it's a double lot by 120 feet. So that's the area that we think makes the most sense for the RFA that Whitney will speak to later. If you go to the next slide, Aaron. So that would be this kind of area in the green box, and this kind of just gives they're really just icons to show how, what could kind of fit on those lots as a single family home or a 2-flat or maybe a townhouse cluster. So that's kind of illustrating a strategy that we think we could have moving forward. And then the area that I'll focus on now is the cluster at 63rd Street. So this is a kind of critical cluster of larger scale lots that are basically we can consolidate to sites that are developable for larger buildings, multifamily buildings that can receive LIHTC support and meet that deeply affordable requirement of the ordinance. So here we're looking at those that kind of zoomed in right now on those particular parcels on 63rd and between basically Ingleside and University. And we want to highlight these again because we think this area provides the best sort of consolidation to get started with the multifamily buildings. And it's really the best opportunity to provide those deeply affordable units that is also close to transit and builds off of the momentum of the cluster development that we're seeing at Cottage Grove. So working with the community, we hope to craft a request for proposals over the next several months in this area. And this would be basically the same process that we've used for the Invest Southwest sites around the city. For those who aren't familiar with that, it's really an open and transparent sort of competitive process where we facilitate direct community involvement with the vision and the design and the development of these buildings or of this corridor. And like Invest Southwest, that would be community engagement would occur throughout the entire process. So we would look to encourage local community and developer participation and to create a inclusive selection process, and then to evaluate the responses that we get from development teams in a communal, in a collective way, and maximize community wealth building opportunities. So this is the sort of target zone to get started, essentially. And then if we go to the next slide. So this slide isn't intended to illustrate a proposal so much as trying to study or understand the size and the density of the buildings that we can fit on these sites. Larger multifamily buildings like this, they have a set of parameters or require a kind of efficiency from a developer standpoint to make them feasible, which is why we need to basically concentrate or start with the consolidated sites where we have enough lots directly adjacent to each other to provide those sites. So this illustrates what the first step towards that might be. So these are illustrated roughly 4 to 5 stories. It would include potentially ground retail or restaurant space. Again, very similar in scale to the Park Station development or other pipeline projects at 63rd and Cottage Grove. And then by our estimate, these say 5 buildings would yield us somewhere around 320 to 350 units total, which would get us right around 100 deeply affordable units. And we think this is it's a great place to start. It's certainly a beginning, but we think it would help, again, continue a lot of that energy that we're seeing at Cottage Grove and 63rd. And again, just to reiterate, that this is just a kind of a starting point, but we really think it's a great first step towards achieving our goals.
Great, thank you, Justin. And again, we'll have time for discussion after we present both proposals. So next, we're going to move on to the home ownership. So what do we mean by home developer for home ownership? Section 2 of the Woodlawn Housing Preservation Ordinance applies when the city sells land for home ownership opportunity. So anytime we're selling the land that the city owned to develop for home ownership, we have to follow these guidelines. So it modifies the City Lots for Working Families program, which is our program that we sell city-owned land for $1. It includes housing types that are single-family homes, condos, townhomes, and 2 flats. A minimum of the units on these in this program must be priced at affordable to households at 120% area median income or below. It extends the neighborhood building neighborhoods and affordable homes purchase price assistance program, which is up to $60,000 for current residents and $50,000 for people who don't currently live in the community, and establish the preference for local developers and require local hiring plans from developers. Just a reminder, here's the focus area that we're looking at. This was, in conversations that we had this summer around the deeply affordable lots and the home ownership opportunities. This is that area that we developed here. And again, Whitney will talk about the starting point for home ownership opportunities as we focus in on a smaller geography and focus in on that. So I will pass it off to Whitney.
Thank you. And I'm in the office by myself, so if the lights go out, I might have to pop up for a second, guys, to turn them back on. So I'm going to cover who's eligible and additional assistance that is available as a part of this RFA or request for application that we will be rolling out. And so who is eligible? Any buyer whose household income meets the program requirements, as Erin had stated. Also, as a part of it, you must occupy the residence. And so it must be your primary residence. So you're eligible and you are going to occupy this residence because it's your home and you love it. How much do you receive? So as a part of the city lots for working families, the buyer does not receive the assistance directly, but it is already calculated into the purchase price because the lot was sold for $1 to the developer. And this is how we can make it affordable to the buyer. And so up to $50,000 is forgiven over 5 years that you reside in the home. Anything over $50,000 is subject to a repayment or a recapture agreement up to 3% interest. And then in order to maintain affordability, if the home is sold within the first 30 years after the purchase date, then it would need to be sold to another affordable buyer who is pre-qualified and pre-approved. So this is how these lots remain affordable moving forward. In addition, we have the Building Neighborhoods and Affordable Homes program, which Erin mentioned, as an additional layer that buyers can use to make their purchase affordable, as well as the Tax Smart program. So what is the Building Neighborhoods and Affordable Homes program? It is attached to the City Lots for Working Families program. And so you have to have purchased a City Lots for Working Families home in order to use that purchase price assistance. The income for a household cannot exceed 140% of the area median income. And then buyers must use the home as, again, their primary residence. For this purchase price assistance program, a minimum of 10 years of occupancy, which is a little different than the requirement for city lots for working families. But if you sell before your 10 years, again, it must be sold to an income qualified home buyer. So this is kind of a quick example of what this could really look like. So if you have a home, and we're going to use some round-ish numbers here, you have an estimated purchase price of $300,000. And this is a formula based on the median income and the number of bedrooms that a home has. And so we're going to use 300,000 here. So for this particular family, it's a family household of 4. And so their income at 120% per the graphic is $111,840. So with a standard mortgage, we're talking, HUD or FHA, a lot of times you can get, you only need to put about 3% down. So for this example, we're looking at $9,000 that the buyer would need to bring to put down. Right now, interest rates are pretty good. So we're looking at about 3.5% for 30-year loan. And then your maximum estimated grant amount of $60,000. So when you deduct the down payment, which the buyer has to bring, and then your maximum grant assistance, your mortgage is about $231,000. And so using NerdWallet to calculate this, we're looking at about $1,037 per month, plus your taxes, insurance, and PMI. So this is just to give you an idea of what that could really look like. And I took a moment to pull the average rents for Woodlawn from the MLS. This is current listings and closed listings. And so the numbers, I didn't look at only closed, but for a 2-bedroom apartment, currently, when over the last 12 months, the average rent is $1,341. And for a 3-bedroom apartment in Woodlawn, it's $1,735. So I just use that to give you an idea of what that could really look like if you're contemplating purchasing versus renting.
Thank you, Whitney. So yeah, this is just a reminder of what we're talking about here. So RFPing process, like Justin described, for the multifamily area here on 63rd Street, which is 13 of these city lots in the highest density allowed, which is, you know, over the requirement of the ordinance. And then the RFA that Whitney just talked about is this area over here, which is developing affordable home ownership with our purchase price assistance to make it affordable to other lower income families. And again, this is just a starting point. We know this is not the end. This is, you know, phase 1, and we'll have other phases to move further and to continue to have community input. But again, the ordinance requires us to do this work. So we're not done, but we're just trying to go from a starting point so that we can move forward. So we will move it to discussion. So like, what local context are we missing about this plan? And also, like, how can we share information about this plan? Again, we do plan on having a larger community conversation about this, but I will stop sharing my screen so that we can see each other for our conversation. I'll ask if you can use the raise the hand feature if you would like to speak. So if you go navigate to the bottom of your screen, you'll see a little smiley face with the plus sign that says reaction. If you click on there, there is a feature that says raise hand. So again, if you can use that, then I will indicate and call on you to speak, and so we can make sure that we have an orderly conversation. But I saw Linda had their hand up first, so I'll ask Linda if you can unmute and talk.
Okay, Aaron, this is a question that I've repeated several times. I've read several reports that indicate Woodlawn already has enough low to moderate income housing. And I've asked if there is any kind of research that would update and indicate that there's a need for more. Can you address that, please?
Hi, Linda. What I can share is that we know how, I mean, this has been, you know, I tried to share this before. It's kind of difficult to say, you know, project into the future, but I can say currently Woodlawn has, as of 2019, it was around 47% of the units in Woodlawn were affordable to families that make around 60% of the area median income for Chicago, and 28% of those units were legally restricted, in which that means 19% of those units were not legally restricted, meaning that's just naturally occurring affordable based on the market.
So based on that, is there a need for more low to moderate income housing? Because the reports I read said there is not. That's my question.
So I can jump in here, Linda. This is Commissioner Navarra, and just say, I think to give a little more context to the numbers that Aaron shared, 28% of the rental housing stock is restricted affordable, right? Meaning that even if other rents go up around you, those rents have to stay at a certain affordable level because they've been subsidized and they're required to be. That makes Woodlawn one of one of 5 community areas out of 77 that have at or more than 28% restricted affordable housing. So on the one hand, it is true that the majority of the city of Chicago's community areas have less restricted affordable housing than Woodlawn has right now. It's also true that through this process with the working group, we've established some baselines, right? And the baselines include that anyone who lives in Woodlawn now, we want to be able to continue to stay in Woodlawn and to be able to continue to afford to live in Woodlawn. And the difference between when Erin says that 28% is restricted affordable housing and about 19% is unrestricted, what that means is that that unrestricted amount plus everything else does not have a rental restriction on it. And that means that if real estate values go up and continue to go up, then the rents in those developments will also continue to go up, and there's not a mechanism to stop that. So we do have a commitment, and we established this with the working group, and we established it, certainly the intent of the ordinance is that where we have a measure of control, which is the land that we own, that we are ensuring that there is affordability there, so that if those additional, that 19% and the remainder of the unrestricted rental housing in Woodlawn, if those rents continue to go up, we continue to have places for people who call Woodlawn home to continue to stay. At the same time, though, what we certainly heard also from the working group was a real interest in rebuilding middle-class home ownership opportunities for people in the community. And so we are also, that's why we're bringing these forward at the same time, because we think it's an important combination to speak to both of those needs that we heard loud and clear from the working group.
Thank you. Next I see Tara's hands up, so feel free to unmute and move forward.
Okay. Good evening, everyone. In reviewing the proposal last night and discussions with some of my friends that are on the call tonight, as well as some neighbors, the question that I want to ask is, I know and that you have on here that approximately about 100 units in this development would be for 50% AMI. I think a way that we may want to maybe be able to look at this is in looking at that that amount that we can increase the number of deeply affordable housing units in there. If we look at the formula, I think in 3 levels, because that's a large 50% below. I think we should target at least 100 units for extremely affordable at below 30. And then let it be maybe another 10% at above the 30 and between 40 and 50. And then we would end up with a mixed income development there, which I think is the goal, and no population would be left out. So, I'm asking, is there an opportunity as we go through this process that we will ensure, because right now I'm seeing from the formula presented, there's not a large number. We want to know the breakdown of the 1 bedrooms, 2 bedrooms, 3 bedrooms to make sure, in these developments that it's covered. I hope I made myself clear.
Yeah, I think so. I can start and then pass it off to the commissioner. So the funding mechanism that we would think to develop these would be the low-income housing tax credit, which is how park stations develop. We won't be able to see the breakdown of bedroom sizes or anything like that until there actually is a proposal on the table. And then those things are just like Park Station, were negotiable. Those people came to the alderwoman and said, we want to see more family size units, and we, negotiated those things. But that breakdown is when it's following this, what the ordinance section 3C says, but then also has affordability levels at different levels to make sure that it is mixed income with, and then some market rate units. But I'll pass it to the commissioner to provide more information.
Yeah, thanks, Erin. That's right. I think it's important to understand when we talk about getting to that level of affordability, 30% of the area median income and 50%, we are talking about low-income housing tax credits. Low-income housing tax credits from the federal, they come to us from the federal government. They're generally pegged at 60% of the area median income to be affordable to people at that level. We know that we need to provide some that are lower than that. And so what we would anticipate doing in the request for proposals is to make clear what the requirements of the ordinance are, so that respondents know coming in the door, if you want to develop on one of these parcels, then off the bat, 30% of anything that you're proposing has to be at 50 and 50% AMI and below, right? And then above that, we generally see then a mix of incomes from there. So to give the example of Park Station Lofts, we know that that development is going to meet the requirements of the ordinance. And then in addition, they've got 23 units that are at 60% of the area median income, and they've got market rate units. So there's a whole range of incomes that are being served, but that's what we would put forth in the request for proposals, is to say that this is the expectation that you would meet section 3C of the ordinance. And beyond that, as Aaron says, we can give some guidelines in the request for proposals that say, we have certain preference to see certain bedroom, number of bedrooms or what have you, and then we evaluate the proposals that we get back.
Okay, well, just one last question then in reference to the cluster and its involvement connection here. Will any of those townhomes, and the condominiums, will they be all for sale, or will some of those can be developed for rent, as well as being a way to have some more affordable units? Could there be some affordable townhomes in that cluster? Or are they all market rate?
No, everything that we're discussing here would be going through would be on city-owned land and would therefore have affordability restrictions. So the for sale units that we talked about, that Whitney walked through, those would follow the guidelines where at least 75% of those would be sold at affordable at affordable levels. And those would be the for sale section. So the north-south streets and 65th Street, where we have more scattered residential lots and where it's more of a residential street rather than 63rd, which is where we see our more, our bigger buildings and our more dense buildings. So we would be looking to do home ownership on those more residential blocks. I'll turn it back over to you, Aaron.
Great, thank you. I do want to address a comment in the chat, and then I'll move to Corey next. So Marilyn said, what's going to happen 63rd, from 63rd King Drive to 63rd Cottage Grove? So I guess the west side of the neighborhood. So I can say this is, we also heard from that focus and see from the focus area. We've heard from this working group. We know that from the focus area that the interest is also to move west. We started with this side because we've heard that there is a great concern about being on the east side, but this would not be the end of this. This would not be this is our first phase. Next phase, we can also move further west. I don't know, Justin, do you have anything you'd like to add?
No, I mean, other than the conditions west of Cottage Grove are not dissimilar in the sense that there are sites there that are, large and that could accommodate similar buildings.
Thank you.
I would just throw in, I think the main difference that we see west of Cottage Grove is that when you look at the residential blocks, we see that we have more ownership by the land bank in that area than we do the city. And we partner very closely with the land bank. So that's not a negative. It's just noting that that's a difference. But we do also have city-owned land on 63rd that is west of Cottage Grove as well. And so that could be part of a future conversation.
Yeah, and I'll move next to Corey Howard.
This is Corey Howard, 6100 block of St. Lawrence. I'm going to try to move fast, less than 60 seconds. I've been following this group on YouTube. You have a YouTube channel where you post most of your videos out there. Some of the stuff you've been posting is I wouldn't say it's inaccurate. I just say it's not up to date. But when the young lady talked about density and concentration, we've got Weekend, Cullen Davis, Leon Finney Properties, POA, the Strand Hotel. We've got Parkway Gardens. We've got St. Edmunds. We're talking about close to 4,000 units of affordable housing within a 1 mile radius. WBZ had an article that says South Shore and Woodlawn have more affordable housing than all 19 wards combined. My question is why? Why are you building so much in a very small area? You're destroying the equity that we have in our properties. We can't send our kids to college. We can't pay off long-term debt. We can't even retire. I don't understand this concentrated. I get why people on the north side want it only built south, but why are our elected officials and people that work for us doing us so wrong? I don't understand that. I have never understood it, but I don't understand why you're doing this to us. I just don't.
I can start. Thank you, Corey. I think it's important that we do take a step back and note that what we're talking about is only development on city-owned land. There is a large amount of privately held land in this community in which the older women involved, can't necessarily have the same level of control over what happens there if it's privately owned land, and the city doesn't either. And in those cases is where we are seeing development that's not necessarily affordable. So there is development happening that's not affordable housing. We're just talking about the affordable housing development here because that's what we can control because it's our land.
It's complete saturation from our perspective. We weathered the housing crisis. These properties went down so low. I even picked up a building on Champlain for $13,000. We saw our equity completely wiped out. We've got a chance now to even get back to levels that we have on mortgage. And you guys are targeting our community for the removal of almost all of that equity. I don't understand why you're doing this stuff. I see why people live north only want it built south. I don't understand why the people that work for us are doing us so wrong. These neighborhoods haven't even recovered from some of the riots. This doesn't make any sense.
I have a question that I would like.
I'd like to comment
hold on one moment,
Mr.
please.
Howard.
We have people's hands up.
it-
Tara, we have people's hands up, so I would like to move in order so we can get people, so everyone has their time to share. So again, please use the raise hand feature at the bottom of your screen. So I'll move on to Sharon Payne next. Ms. Payne, are you there?
I'm not seeing the raised hand feature. I'm
Okay.
sorry.
Yeah, no problem. It's at the bottom of your screen. There's a little smiley face that says reaction.
Miss Payne is probably on the phone. You're going to have to press *6 to unmute.
Thank you, Savannah. And then there's a raise the hand.
You have me now?
Yes, we do.
Okay. Hello, everyone. I just want to make some comments about the proposed housing along 63rd Street. First off, it's needed it was needed like 2 years ago or more than that. You're only proposing a small amount of housing here. And I'm looking at the stats that you put up here. It's not going to address the housing crisis that is going on in Woodlawn now, today. You have people who are losing places today. And we keep going back to the same drawing board, and we keep prolonging this a little longer and a little longer and a little longer. And more people are becoming homeless because of, this doubt or the slowness and actually get things going. We have the land there. We need to get people to come in and actually do what they said they're going to do. I'm a little frustrated here. I'm looking at the scale of the drawings that you set up, and they're like 5 stories, but really 4 stories, because only 4 stories are going to be occupied. So you really need something a little larger than that. I'm not proposing a 20-story building, but I think something larger than 4 stories for occupancy is appropriate. The small amount that you're willing to develop right now, and you want to put the rest of it off till later. Well, this is later. We've been going through this for 6 years. This is later. So we've got to go ahead and move on this now. So we can actually get the people who are going to develop these places, so they know what they're working with. Okay.
Thank you, Ms. Payne.
I'd like to just say one thing, and then I'll turn it back to you, Aaron, to manage the next hands. I do just want to make sure, because I know this isn't necessarily intuitive, to explain how the process works to fund affordable housing development. And because it does dictate our possible paths forward here. So when we talk about the commitment in the ordinance that a minimum of 10 highest density lots will have the 30 to 50% area median income, and that 52 lots are reserved for that. It's important to understand that we get that level of affordability only when we're doing rental housing, and we get that level of affordability when we are subsidizing the development. And our main way of subsidizing the development is through low-income housing tax credits. We are awarded tax credits directly from the federal government, and we do a funding round every 2 years. A typical year for us, we might fund about 11 developments across the city for an average of around 1,200 units across the entire city. So if we're talking here about, possibly around 350 units, that's quite a bit in comparison to the entire city. And we typically, a typical development that we might fund in one round might be 60 units, might be as high as 80 or so. We are generally somewhere in that proximity. And so what we're proposing that we put forth here would be a request for proposals where the proposals all meet Section 3C of the ordinance. And we would need to fund it over many years, because that's the degree to which our funding comes in. We hope that the state would join us and take on some of the funding of this, but it's still going to take several of our funding rounds to complete a development of this size. So I did just want to explain that because it is just the way our country funds affordable rental housing, and the way that we as the Department of Housing have to balance those resources across the entire city. And with that, I'll turn it back over to Aaron.
Thank you. I'll pass it to Sharon Dyer.
Yes, Dyer. Good night, everyone. Thank you for the presentation. I missed the first few minutes. I apologize if my question is not as informed as it could have been. I'll try to be quick. It's more so a comment, I think, more than a question. I'm on the 6100 block of South St. Lawrence as well. And I am struggling to sort of humanize the data that I'm seeing and hearing about, and curious just in terms of need, and as Cord mentioned, just the need to satisfy this affordable housing opportunities. I guess I feel as though there's a certain group that's continuously left out in that middle class sort of income. And there was even a Woodlawn grant that was made available. And I know several neighbors who were not eligible. And so one, I guess I'm curious in terms of this 120 AMI threshold. I feel it eliminates the opportunity to service this other population within Woodlawn of folks who want to stay, but may feel priced out. And so I don't know if there's a set formula for, one, first developing affordable housing, and then that will attract businesses and commercial, and then we can move into single family home development. But I feel as though Woodlawn is so saturated with rentals, and there's just not enough opportunities that I'm seeing for new stock of single family housing. And I'm wondering if that is a part of the conversation. And the second piece, how are we differentiating which quadrant gets the development first? What drives that decision? Thank you.
Yeah, I can speak to the homeownership piece. So in the previous working group meetings earlier this year, or last year, I should say, in the summer, we kind of talked about this focus area that included this kind of central area that we're talking about and moving further kind of west. Also, it's shaped around where the city owns land. But home ownership is something that we actually did present tonight. So you may have just joined after we went through that presentation. So 120% of the area median income for a family of 4 is $111,000 annually. 100% of the area median income is $93,000 for a family of 4. So we are looking at developing single family, having a request for applications through our city lots for working families program, where a minimum of those need to be affordable at that 120% area median income level, which Whitney gave an example of would be around $300,000 priced at. That means that, there could be some that are market rate as well. But we're looking at developing single family homes, 2 flats, condominiums, and townhomes. So we're also trying to make sure that, again, we're taking in that need for having that kind of middle income housing, ownership opportunities, as well, but also making sure that we're trying to make that as affordable in the long term, but also understanding that the difference between owning and rental is that people need to be able to do the maintenance on their home. So we want to make sure that people are able to preserve the home ownership in the long run. Whitney, do you have anything you'd want to add to that?
Actually, I was trying to find if I had pulled the MLS data for the last year of new homes versus, so if I can find that, I can drop that in the chat just so you guys have a data point from the MLS, which is the private sales that are happening in the neighborhood.
Thank you. I'll move to Michelle Williams next.
Good evening, everyone. I'm racking my brain. I'm listening to what you're saying about affordable housing for everyone at 100 and something thousand. They just finished building a home. I'm in Woodlawn. I'm at 64th and Stony, and they just sold a home for $600,000. How could that be affordable? Even though we're talking about city lots, but the city has a lot of control over different things. Why are they allowing $600,000, $700,000, and $800,000 homes to be built in these areas and nothing for the affordable housing? Because that's not affordable to me, especially of a working person. And they say Woodlawn income for a family of 4 is only $29,000. No bank is gonna back nobody at those prices. So why the affordable? What is gonna be the affordable houses for the people that I don't want no home? I've had a couple of them. But for people that have children and do want a home, how can they afford it and they don't have an income? Because $29,000 is not an income, even though that's for a year. That's an income what they have to survive on, but you're barely making ends meet. So there's no way the 52 lots that they said they were going to give for affordable housing for people to rent. But what about those that want to buy? You're talking about the city, but the city has control over all of it, regardless whether it's city lots or private lots. And they can make the decision of giving up a lot for affordable housing for X amount of years that would sustain enough people. If you're gonna say it's 30% of whatever the contractor bill, and he builds maybe a 6-story with 10 apartments. How many of those will be affordable? That's not many.
Ms. Williams, just to clarify, when there's a privately owned property and there's no zoning change needed, let's say it was set up to be a single family home already, and it's a vacant lot and someone builds a single family home, it is not the case that either the city or the alderperson can dictate in that instance what it gets sold for. They can sell for whatever the market will bear. And that's why we are talking about what we can do to provide options for homeownership and for rental on the land that we do control, in which the city and the alder people do have a say about what happens there. So that is an important distinction, because when it's privately held land and they don't need a zoning change, there is that is a transaction that can occur without any interference, as long as they don't need to change the use of what's happening there. That's why we're doing what we can on the land that we do own.
But what is that? Now, right now, they're not really doing that much on the land that they do on. Why is that?
Well, that's what we're here talking about today, is these proposals and how we can move forward. One thing that the city has not done is we haven't been selling our land because we wanted to engage with the community for how this would be used. Which is how this ordinance came to be created, was working with the community to develop that. And then we've been working as a working group to make sure that we're getting the feedback of the community and that we're creating the type of housing. And just a reminder, it's not just 52 lots that have affordability restrictions on Woodlawn that are city-owned land. It is all city-owned land, which is 208 lots in Woodlawn, has affordability restrictions on it, depending on the type of housing that's built. So I do want to just make sure that we remember that we're not only restricted to this, that the restrictions are put on us for all of Woodlawn, and just a deeper level of affordability restrictions are put on 52 lots. So I'll move next to Monica. I see your hand's been up. Yep.
Hi. I just wanted to also thank you very much for this forum. And I too came a little bit after you started, so there's a lot that I didn't hear. But I am understanding what you're saying about opening up Woodlawn more and creating more affordable housing, which I think is a great goal. My concern, as a person who was born and raised in Woodlawn, I actually live in the 2-flat in the 600 block of East 60th, directly across the street from Washington Park, that beautiful historic park. That I live in the 2-flat that I was raised in, although I have not lived here continuously for all of my entire life, but for most of it. And my experience with absentee landlords who own subsidized housing is that they do not care who they put in that housing, unfortunately. And often it's people who, don't care about the property, the neighborhood, the environment. And so you are feeling this constant sense of frustration related to these kinds of landlords for whom that housing is a huge cash cow, but who aren't really invested in the neighborhood and in the community, and seeing the community really thrive and develop and attract people that are going to make the community better. And I'm really concerned about that. I'm wondering how you have figured that piece into the expansion that you're describing. Thank you.
Thank you. I will say, and I'll put this into the chat. We have produced our housing booklet, which is the goes over all of our programs for housing. One of the programs that the city offers is the Troubled Buildings Initiative. So that is if there are like health and safety violations that are happening in your community, or there are kind of criminal activities that are happening, you can report that. And it's the buildings department, the police department, and our department that work together to address this. I'll also say is that for our low-income housing tax credit deals that we, have mentioned how we're talking about funding these larger developments. These are, we have recently finished a racial equity impact assessment that we've talked about how we can have better engagement with the community and developers and the residents who live there, that these things are being addressed. So those are things that we're looking into that are a deeper level, making sure that this being reached for these issues.
Okay, well, thank you. Thank you for saying that. I think some of us on the call have gone that route, trying to work through troubled buildings, police, everybody that we can think of, and we're ignored, and these same problems persist. So, I was just wondering how you're figuring that in. It sounds like it's a work in progress, but that is deeply concerning to people who really care about where they live and care about the neighborhood. Really heartbreaking.
May I chime in for a minute?
Sure.
To address, because I've got a large number of buildings, and I actually wrote the first drug and gang house ordinance in response to what was happening here in South Shore. When everybody was steered to South Shore, and the people who acquired the buildings were just basically correcting the rent and not managing the buildings. So one of the things that you can do, and yes, the police are but a tool, you also should have a meeting with CHA if they are the ones that collect, if that is an issue, and really have a sit down with the management company.
I've reached out to owners. Trust me, I've reached out to. There's one man, and I don't want to take up all the time because other people have comments and questions. There's one man, for example, who owns. I'm going to say almost half of the block on East 6, the 600 block here, and he just, those vouchers. He just takes anybody. It's always criminals, drug addicts, people with mental health problems. And I've talked with this guy, but he doesn't care. He's rich from this subsidized housing.
You can show him better than you can tell him. And so I'm sure your alderman would be willing to schedule a meeting with him and the city departments and CHA. What I've been able to do in some of my buildings, that sometimes they did not get paid until their building was where it should be. So those are, you do have some other options.
Okay, well, thank you. And we'll try that route and hope that it bears some fruit. And thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, Alderwoman. Thank you for sharing, Monica.
Sure.
And, next, I'll move to Mark Hopkins.
Yes, good evening.
Good evening.
I put my question in the chat. I want to get a follow on to Linda's question earlier. It didn't really sound like you really answered the question. She was trying to determine what the real need for affordable housing is in Woodlawn. So I'm going to ask a more specific question, and that is, what is the number of housing choice vouchers in Woodlawn, holders in Woodlawn? And of that number, if you have that number, what's the percentage of that in terms of total housing units? Because to me, that would kind of determine, or at least give me a good ballpark of what the actual need really is.
So that housing choice vouchers are issued by the Chicago Housing Authority, so we would need to get that number from them. I don't have it.
What I can share with you is the preservation compact, which works with HUD, us, and the state, has a map of legally restricted, so LIHTC buildings, public housing. So I can share that. You can do it by ward or by community area as well. So you can see all the buildings. And then if you click on a building, it says the total number of units and the address. So I'll just put that in the chat that you can access. It's a Google map is what it says, but it's from the preservation compact, which works with the local government agencies on legally restricted housing. Thank you. I will also just say it again, it's difficult to just do population forecasting. So we're not trying to only plan for what currently, we're trying to help preserve the housing that is here, but also make sure that we're in the, with the new development coming in with the Obama Presidential Center that may attract more people. So we're also trying to be future looking as well. But thank you, Mark. I'll move to Evangelist Latisse.
Yes, good evening, everyone. How are you this evening?
Good, how are you?
I just have a question. The grants, I'm concerned with the residents that may want the housing in Woodlawn, but they might not be able to even afford I think you spoke of the $9,000. So is it possible that the grant that you're offering can be placed on the front of that mortgage so that they can go into the housing without really even having to have a down payment? Is that possible for Woodlawn? Because I've heard that it's been done that way. I do remember when they had the city bond program, and I had a girlfriend, I think during that time, the grant was like $50,000, and she was able to purchase a condominium downtown on Franklin. So I just wonder, in speaking in terms of affordable housing and making it available to all of those that would qualify, can you place that grant on the front for them so that they can go into this housing? That's my question.
So I'm unmuted, right? Yep. Okay. So the max is 60,000, and that max is if it's a Woodlawn resident who is a renter purchasing in Woodlawn. So I just want to make that distinction. But it can be used for appraisal gap, closing costs, down payment assistance, but typically it's the funding or the bank and the type of loan that's going to dictate that more. It can also be used for senior loan principal reduction as well. And so we can come back and confirm, but it can be used for down payment assistance. However, typically with the loans that are considered, the FHA or the HUD, they do require the 3%. But depending on what the total financing for that person looks like, it could be possible because it can be used for down payment assistance.
Okay, and then, so in doing the math on that, you're saying it's a $60,000 grant. If it can be used toward that, and then they go to the bank, would you then raise the bar on the, not put that 100,000 limit on it? Like say, for instance, you give the $60,000 grant, and then they go to somewhere like Chase Bank, who might be offering an extra $5,000, and then all they have to have is this amount of money. Is Chase gonna agree with this grant that you're giving them to go into that home? I think that's kind of.
So are you asking if you can stack programs on top of each other?
Yes, I think I want to know if you can. Are they going to be able to combine that, or is that 60,000 should be sufficient if that's all they asking for. But when they go to Chase Bank, are they gonna be able to say, hey, I got a Woodlawn ordinance grant for 60,000, and will that bank accept that?
It's going to depend on the lender. So I can't definitively answer that question. I can speak to my experience of being a broker, but it's going to depend on the lender on if you can stack all of the programs to get no down payment. But there are programs out there that will allow.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you. Next
Yes, Aaron, this is Linda Tinsley. I've had my hand up for the longest. How are you this evening?
I'm doing well.
I'm first right here. You can see my name.
Yes. Did you already speak though?
No, that was
okay.
the other,
Sorry.
that was the other Linda.
Sorry, that was my fault. Got the Lindas mixed up. I thought you were
Right,
just
I figured that.
Okay, yeah. Go ahead, and then we'll move next. Yeah.
Okay, all right. What I want to talk about is I am definitely for affordable housing. Okay, matter of fact, I live in affordable housing at this point in time. I live right there on 61st and Cottage Grove in a POA building, Preservation of Affordable Housing. Very good management. Okay. I'm sure all the people on here know the buildings that are along 61st and Cottage Grove down to 63rd. Okay. Those are some of POA's main buildings. Okay. Now, I understand a lot of people's concerns and so on concerning affordable housing, subsidized, whatever. But bottom line, we need, yes, we do. We need a lot of affordable housing still. And the units, the lots along 63rd from Cottage Grove, or let's say Drexel on down east on 63rd. Those are large density, okay, lots, and that would service quite a bit of affordable housing. And since we're going to have a mixture in the buildings that will be built, we need as many units as we can. That's going to be like 30%, okay, or lower, okay. That's my concern for people. That's that's in that income bracket. All right. So that's basically what I wanted to say, is that as long as you have good management that's that's presiding over the buildings, and like I said, I have to give POA a thumbs up. You won't have you shouldn't have a lot of problems and so on. All right, that's all. That's what I had to say.
Thank you, Ms. Tinsley. I'm so sorry for skipping over you.
No, it's okay. I understand.
I'm so sorry. Next, I'll move to Dwayne Bailey.
Hey, good evening, everybody. So I want to make two comments. First, Aaron, I'd like to say that I'm supportive of the presentation and the proposal that's been presented thus far by you and Mr. Peterson and Ms. Whitney, right? I think that we should move ahead in that. My second comment has to do with the comments about increasing the density on these lots in order to increase the number of units that are low or very low. I am not in favor of that. The city of Chicago is huge, and there is nothing that would suggest that Woodlawn has to develop a plan to absorb housing for everybody in the city of Chicago who's in need of affordable housing. I think we have history where we can look and see what happens to communities and neighborhoods that overbuild affordable housing. We know what happens. So we don't have to relive that. Now, I'm an advocate for affordable housing. I've worked in affordable housing for a number of years. I understand what it's about. So I'm not speaking from a position of being anti-affordable housing. But we do know that you can't have put a lot of affordable housing in a very short area, small area, without having all sorts of other problems and challenges for the community that pop up. So I just want you to know that you've got a diversity of opinions about that out here, so that you can take notes on that.
All right, thank you, Mr. Bailey. Naomi Davis. Naomi, are you still here? Okay, Naomi.
Yes, I'm still here.
Okay.
I had put my questions in the chat back when the question of zoning variances arose.
Do you
And
want to
so-
speak to it?
Well, yeah, I just
Okay.
was concerned to know more about the process and the criteria that applied when a zoning variance was required, because I have witnessed and participated in a process that did not require any written community benefits to the community to in exchange for a variance that permitted development to move forward. And I understand the bully pulpit that the city has when a developer needs a variance. And I'd like to see that used more aggressively to ensure more housing that's affordable to low and moderate income households. Can you talk about what kind of requirements you have used in the past, or best practices from neighboring municipalities, or ideas that you have for how that can be used more effectively to produce the outcomes we're talking about tonight?
So I can start with that, Ms. Davis. And then I'd love to invite both alderwomen if they want to speak to their process when that comes up. What I will say from the city's perspective, the Affordable Requirements Ordinance, which we recently updated last year, requires that if there is a market rate development, so this is not a development that the city is subsidizing in any way. If there's a market rate multifamily development that requires a zoning change, city land or city money, then the Affordable Requirements Ordinance kicks in, and it requires that 20% of the units in that development be affordable. And we have put in some incentives to ensure that we are reaching lower incomes than simply 60% of the area median income, which is what it used to be. We also have incentives to do 2 and 3 bedroom units as well. We do not have any developments in Woodlawn to this point that have triggered the ARO. We have not seen any large multifamily developments that have not required a subsidy, but that is there if that does occur in the future. Then I would like to note that, or to turn it over to Alderwoman Taylor and or Hairston, just to speak to their process if they would like to.
I'll let Alderwoman Taylor go first since she hasn't had an opportunity to speak.
So in order to do a zoning change in the community, they meet with the community development team, and they have to have 2 community meetings, which allows the people in a 0.5 mile radius to vote on whether or not this process actually they actually get the zoning change. We've only had 2 projects. Janora can correct me if I'm wrong, that have come through. They haven't been in Woodlawn. They've actually been in the back of the yard, and they've wanted a zoning change so that they can pay the same amount of taxes as homeowners, and it's been shut down. It hasn't made it past the community. It hasn't made it past the community development team. And so we haven't had any projects with those 2. Janora, if you're on, am I correct?
Absolutely correct.
Thank you. So yeah, anytime that there's a zoning change, they want, it's a liquor license. What else? Zoning change. Well, they're asking for TIF dollars, it automatically goes through a community process.
Thank you, Alderwoman. And then Alderman Hairston, do you have anything you'd like to share about your process?
I too have a process. If any developer comes into the ward, number 1, there's a developer questionnaire. They are vetted. And then they must present their proposal at one of my monthly ward meetings, where the community decides whether that project is going to move forward or not. People get an opportunity to see what they'd like to see, to say what they're looking for, to say what amenities they're looking for. And I have that for all of the 4 areas that I represent. So that's how we've done it, and it's worked very, very well. We've been very successful with it.
Thank you, Alderman Hairston. So I see that we're running low on time, and I want to respect people's times and give you all time back to get with your families. And I appreciate you all coming out and sharing your feedback on these proposals. I'll try to get to Tracy, then Marcus, and if we have time, then I'll go back to Linda and Sharon Payne. If not, then I'll be sure to put my contact information in the chat, the Woodlawn website in the chat. Just a reminder that this meeting is being recorded. I will upload it to our YouTube page and on that website for you to view. But you can also always send your feedback to the email that's on the Woodlawn site that's monitored by me, or just my personal email with the city, which also I check very frequently. But I'll move to Tracy next.
Thank you. My name is Tracy Thompson. I am a homeowner, a resident 6300, 6400 South Ingleside. 3 quick questions. First one, is this entire thing a done deal, or will residents have an opportunity to vote on it? I don't know if that's what Alderman Taylor just spoke to. My second question, is there a citizenship requirement for rental assistance, or are undocumented immigrants able to avail themselves of the assistance with rent? If you could you said something about Woodlawn being in the top 5 of the 77 neighborhoods related to something. And I don't know if you were saying with subsidized, that already had subsidized units, or it was something to do with affordability and housing, and Woodlawn was in the top 5 of the 77 Chicago neighborhoods. If you could briefly touch on that. My last question, city-owned vacant lots on residential streets. Did you say that those would be only sold for single family? And that's it. Thank you so much for your time.
Thank you. Commissioner, I'll let you go.
Okay, so Tracy, no, we did not say that would only be single family. I think what Justin showed on the maps and what Whitney walked through was that there could be a range of from single family homes to 2 flats to townhomes, and possibly in the future condos, for sale condos. Those are all a range of for sale opportunities. I think in this particular request for applications, we were looking at single family homes, 2 flats and townhomes as the for sale opportunities that we were exploring in the residential blocks that are not high density, as opposed to 63rd Street, which is where we do see the higher density being appropriate. To your other question, Tracy, what I said was that Woodlawn has 28% of Woodlawn's rental housing stock is restricted affordable, meaning no matter how much the average rent goes up in the community, those units must stay at the affordability level that they've agreed to. And that makes Woodlawn one of 5 community areas that is at 28% or above. So most community areas have less restricted affordable housing. That is true. I will say too, I do think just to hit on a couple different points that folks have raised in the chat and on here, that keeping in mind that, you know, we just made an announcement in December about awards of low-income housing tax credits across the city, and that was in 20 different communities, and including parts of the north side and all over the city. And so we do have a commitment to establishing an equitable distribution of affordable housing across the entire city. Obviously, in this meeting, we are very focused on Woodlawn, but for the department as a whole, we do have a commitment to ensuring that people across the city have options and can choose to stay where they are, can move if they want to move, et cetera. So I do just want to make that point as well.
I will also just say to add on to that is that we also are working with alderpersons on the north and northwest side of the city to get out the word more about voucher programs and other programs for subsidized housing for their wards as well. Another question that you
sorry, Garen, if you were going to address that.
Asked Tracy was if people who are undocumented are able to get rental assistance or rent access to these things. So yes, people who citizenship is not a qualification for our housing programs. We strive to make sure that housing is available to people regardless of citizenship status, or income, or race, ethnicity, background. So we are for affirmatively furthering fair housing. And then Justin, do you have something to add?
Yeah, I think the first question there, Tracy, was whether or not this is a done deal, and that's definitely not the case. We would, as I think we mentioned, look to engage the community not only in the crafting of the request for proposals itself, but then moving forward through that process. So this is just the beginning.
Yeah, and I'll just share the next steps. Our next steps are also working to presenting this idea to the wider community at ward nights with the alder person, Alderwoman Hairston or Alderwoman Taylor, and then going through that community development process that Alderwoman Taylor just alluded to with the community development team. And then I will give the last question of the night to Marcus. And then I'll put in the chat for people, again, for the email addresses that you can still send your comments to. And again, this recording will put online, and to the working group, I will send out the slides that we presented tonight, as always. So Marcus.
Greetings and good evening, everybody. So I really don't have a question, more as of statements. I'm hearing a lot of information, a lot of different feedback from individuals in this group. And it's great for all of us to be able to collaborate and also share our viewpoints and opinions. Me, I'm a long-term resident of Woodlawn, born and raised, attended Andrew Carnegie School, been here since 1980. So as we look at affordable housing, we also must look at the vacant lots around in the community. We often has been said by the Dr. Chandra Gill that vacant lots created vacant mindsets. Our neighborhoods have been socially excluded and economically deprived for so many years. So you can't compare Woodlawn as it relates to other neighborhoods within the city of Chicago if you want to compare it to up north. It's a reason why the influx of affordable housing happened during those time and periods, because there was no way that we can actually obtain or retain employment in said neighborhoods. And also, like the great Matty Butler says, there's room for everybody in the Woodlawn community. So it's room enough for affordable housing. I don't see it as being concentrated because it's mixed use. So if it's mixed use and you have buildings with affordable market rate rent that's in the building with people that who can afford to live in the community, to me, that's not concentrated. And if you purchased a building for $15,000 years ago, you made a great investment. Because right now, buildings are at a minimum going for $300,000 or better. So I don't see as far as, well, we're saying, hey, we losing money, we losing equity as we affordable housing is being created within the neighborhood. The Obama Presidential Center will build more wealth and income for people who live in this neighborhood. So what was said in the fight for advocacy for affordable housing in our community was the right for people who've been living here, fighting through all that deprivation, to be able to stay here. So as this neighborhood is changing, we don't want to be pushed out. We want to change right along with it. So, and stop labeling. I want this group, and not everybody, because I can't generalize people, but stop labeling people who stay in affordable housing as you think they breed this criminalization aspect, because that's what I really hear. Poverty breeds criminalization. So if we're looking at to actually build our community, let's look at, like you said, putting some retail spaces on the bottom of those floors. Let's create some economic opportunities. 53rd and Hyde Park don't look like 63rd. I grew up over here. Buildings sold for $1 when I was young. So I've been here when whole buildings, people got buildings for $1. And right now they're market rate rentals and not affordable. So I've been here through the long haul. And like I said, Matty Butler says room for everybody that's here. So we need to find a way that we can think creatively. Like the evangelist said, hey, everybody not gonna be able to afford $9,000 deposits for a home. How can we think creatively to make sure that, hey, we get some home ownership for people who live in this community? How do we think creatively to make sure that we have insurances? We fighting for affordable housing. We fighting for economic development too for people that live here. So eventually they can move out of affordable housing and go to an affordable home that they actually own. So this is the fight. This is the plight for the community. And this is the plight for my community. I lost over 30 friends to gun violence. Why? Because my neighborhood was economically deprived. I couldn't walk to a job. I didn't have jobs in my community. I was rare. Why? Because I had a mother and father in my household. My households didn't have that. So don't label and don't look at everybody like they want to be criminals. It's generational behaviors, and also it's been also generational conditions that has been applied to brown and black people in the city of Chicago. So let's get off this affordable housing versus market housing. Hey, we all can live in this one community together. Let's look at creative ways on how we can build together and live together. If it need to be higher buildings built to make sure that people don't get pushed out of our community, hey, let's do that. I don't want to hear us saying that what we can't do, because the people can do anything. So let's work together and let's think creatively on how we can find a space for all us to live in a peaceful environment in Woodlawn. And that's it for me for this evening.
Very good.
Thank you, Marcus.
Thank you, Marcus, for sharing that words with us. I'm going to be respectful of everyone's time. I appreciate you all coming to this session. Again, this is not the end. We wanted to present this information to the working group first because you all have been with us through the long haul and helping shape this. So we will take in your feedback, and we'll be presenting this to Ward 9s, presenting this to the development committee, and this will not be the end of our conversation. I'll email you all the link once it's posted on our website, and I'll email you all the slides from tonight so you can look back and if you want to think about it a little bit more. But Commissioner, do you have any parting words that you'd like to add?
I appreciate everyone's effort and time. This is, as has been noted, this began 2.5 years ago, and we're still going strong, and we're still shaping this work. And of course, for many of you, it began long before that. What I'm saying is this particular effort around shaping this ordinance, and now the next steps, I really just want to commend you all as a community for your steadfastness and coming back to the table, working through differences of opinions, and getting to what we think will be a really balanced proposal that gets at rental housing, that gets at home ownership opportunities for people in the community. So thank you again, and thank you to Alderwoman Taylor and Hairston as well.
All right. Thank you all. Good night.
Thank you all.
Thank you.
Good night.
Good night.
Night.